Look, I built systems that can handle millions of users. Systems where a single second of downtime costs actual money. The kind of infrastructure that keeps CTOs up at night. But here's the thing that will sound absolutely crazy. When I build an MVP, I deliberately do things that don't scale. I know. Every founder I meet is terrified that their site is going to crash the moment they hit product hunt. They want Kubernetes clusters, microservices, the full Netflix stack before they've signed their first paying customer. And I have to sit them down with a cuppa and explain why that's possibly the worst thing that they could do. So I'm Carl, and today I'm going to save you about 6 months and probably $100,000 explaining why premature optimization is killing your startup before it even launches. Right, let's address the elephant in the room. Every founder thinks they're going to be the next Airbnb. And that's brilliant. You should be thinking big. But here's what actually happens in the real world. According to First Round Capital's analysis of their portfolio companies, the average startup takes 18 months to reach 10,000 active users. 18 months. And most of their companies are successful ones with proper funding. Think about that. You're not going to wake up tomorrow to 1 million users hammering your servers. You're going to wake up to your mum and your mate Dave and maybe 3 people from Twitter who actually signed up. I once worked with a founder who spent 6 months building their data infrastructure, full data team, proper ETL pipelines, data warehousing, the works. 6 months with a full-scale data team on contract. It's over £500,000 and they hadn't sold to a single client, not one. 0 customers, 0 revenue, just a beautiful, scalable data infrastructure, processing absolutely nothing. And you know what happened? They ran out of cash before they could properly validate their product market fit because they were too busy being clever with their infrastructure instead of talking to customers. Donald Knuth, who's basically the godfather of computer science, said premature optimization is the root of all evil. And he was talking about code performance. Scale it up to infrastructure and you're looking at a startup suicide. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your startup is more likely to die from lack of customers than from too many of them. According to CB Insights, 35% of startups fail because there's no market need. Know how many fail because the infrastructure couldn't scale? It doesn't even make the top 10. You're solving the wrong problem. Now, let me put on my CTO hat for a minute and talk about the real trade-offs. Every hour that you spend building a scalable system is an hour you're not spending on talking to customers, iterating on features, actually making money, and figuring out if anybody wants a bloody thing that you're building. Let's do some napkin math, yeah? Say you're a decent developer. You can probably build an MVP with modern tools in about 4 to 6 weeks if you're not overthinking it. That's using something like Next.js, Supabase, and Vercel. Dead simple, chuck it on a £15 a month hobby plan and you're golden. But you want to be proper about it. You want microservices, you want container orchestration, you want CI/CD pipelines that would just make Google jealous. Now you're looking at 4 to 6 months and you'll probably need to hire a DevOps engineer at like 70k a year, plus AWS bills, that'll make your accountant cry. That's 6 months where you have 0 revenue, 0 validated learning, and you're burning through cash like it's monopoly money. Here's what kills me. That fancy architecture that you're building is probably wrong anyway. You don't know what your scale problems are going to be because you don't know what your product is going to be. Instagram started as a check-in app called Bourbon. Twitter was supposed to be a podcasting platform. Slack was literally the leftover bits from a failed video game company. None of these companies built for their final scale on day one. They couldn't have. They didn't know what they were building yet. Your users are going to do weird things you've never expected. They're going to use features in ways you've never imagined. Your bottleneck might be your database or your API or something completely sideways like your image processing pipeline. You won't know until you've had users doing actual things. So why are you architecting for a scale problem you can't possibly predict? Alright, let's get practical. What should you actually build? I call this the good enough stack. And I mean that as a compliment. It's robust enough to handle serious growth, but simple enough that you can actually ship something. Here's what I'm recommending to founders in 2026. Frontend, Vercel, plus Next.js, or something similar. Vercel's edge network is ridiculous. You're getting a CDN distribution that would have cost hundreds of thousands to build yourself a decade ago. Their free tier handles 100 gigabytes of bandwidth. Their pro tier at £16 a month handles 1 terabyte. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 10 to 20 million page loads a month on the pro tier, depending on your bundle size. And if you've got 20 million page loads before you've got revenue, mate, you've got other problems. Backend, Supabase or Firebase if you must. Postgres is a proper boring technology, and boring is good. Supabase gives you a real database, authentication and real-time subscriptions out of the box. Their free tier supports up to 500 megabyte database size and 2 gigabytes of bandwidth. That's generally enough for your first 1,000 users or so. And when you outgrow it, their Pro plan at £21 a month gives you 8 gigabyte database and 50 gigabytes of bandwidth. We're talking tens of thousands of active users before you need to think about anything else. And here's the beautiful bit. It's just Postgres. When you eventually do scale, media storage, Cloudflare R2 or Supabase storage. If you're handling user uploads, images, videos, whatever, Cloudflare R2 is a chef's kiss. It's S3 compatible, so you're not learning some weird API, but they don't charge for egress bandwidth. AWS S3 will charge you about 75 quid per terabyte of bandwidth. R2, zero. Nothing. You only pay for storage space, which is like 12 quid per terabyte per month. The total damage? Let's add that up for a proper working product. Vercel Pro, 16 quid a month. Supabase Pro, 21 quid a month. Cloudflare R2, 15 quid a month, if you're storing a decent amount. Your domain, 10 quid a year. So you're looking at what, like 50, 60 quid a month to run a system that can genuinely handle 50,000 users. For a comparison, a basic AWS setup with EC2 instances, RDS, S3, CloudFront would cost you at least 300 to 500 quid a month, and you'd actually need to know what you're doing with the infrastructure. Now, I'm not saying that you should never scale properly. Eventually, you're gonna need to. Here are the actual signals that it's time to graduate from good enough to a real stat. Signal 1, you're consistently hitting platform limits. Not once on a product hunt launch day, consistently. If your database is routinely maxing out connections or your functions are timing out regularly, okay, now it's time. Signal 2, you've got revenue to support it. Now this is the big one. If you're making 20 grand a month MRR, then you can afford a £500 a month infrastructure bill and maybe a part-time DevOps person. Before that, you're just burning cash. Signal 3, you found product market fit. Now this is the hardest one to quantify, but you'll know. Your retention is good, your growth is organic, users are paying without you having to beg. That's when you invest in scale. According to Sequoia Capital analysis, most successful startups don't invest heavily in infrastructure until they're at the 500K to a million ARR. That's about 1,000 to 2,000 paying customers for most B2B SaaS companies. And even then, you scale incrementally. You don't go from Vercel to a full-scale Kubernetes cluster overnight. Maybe you move your database to a managed Postgres instance with more resources. Maybe you add Redis caching for your most hit endpoint. Baby steps. Baby steps. Look, I get it. Building a proper, scalable system feels good. It feels professional. It feels like you're doing serious business. But here's what actually feels good. Having customers, making money, validating your idea isn't completely mental. Remember, Airbnb's site crashed on their first big launch. Twitter's fail well was basically their mascot for years. Facebook was literally PHP scripts on a single server. They didn't die from scale problems. They grew into them, which is a lovely problem to have. So do yourself a favor. Build something simple, ship it tomorrow, and spend your time finding people who will actually pay you money. The scaling problems will come, and when they do, you'll have the revenue to solve them properly. If you found this useful, smash the like button, subscribe for more problematic startup advice, and drop a comment telling me what good enough stack you're using. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.